The next topic is phonological knowledge, and phonological knowledge in relation to conceptual and empirical issues. So we will look at the conceptual issues as well as the empirical issues with regard to number of researches that have been conducted on this particular topic. Phonological knowledge as something which was written by Noel Burton Roberts addresses central questions in the foundation of phonology and locates them within their larger linguistic and philosophical context. Now, in phonological knowledge, Noel Burton basically deals with phonology and the phonological knowledge in relation to syntax and phonetics, and also the very nature of the acquisition of phonological knowledge. When we look at this, the type of information that have been explained in the phonological knowledge is with regard to whether phonology should be included in language faculty, implication of sign language for phonology, the data and methods appropriate for the phonological inquiry, and also all the aspects which throw light on the implication of the understanding of phonological knowledge in other areas. Key issue is the phonological knowledge different from linguistic knowledge in general? Now, linguistic basically is the study of all aspects of language, starting from the very production of speech sound to the formation of words and the expression in a given context. Whereas the phonology is the study of sound system, that how different languages have different sound systems and how those sounds are combined to be expressed in a given way. Phonology also deals with phonetics as well as morphology as their subfields. Since it is to do with the conceptual and empirical issues, so we have to look at the number of researches conducted by different researchers where they have highlighted the conceptual and empirical issues. Now, the first of all, we see the Burton Roberts, who have also contributed in the phonological knowledge, and according to them, they have recently shown that there are at least 4 main views concerning the goals and methods of phonological theory, and thus of phonological knowledge. Now, given the generally held assumption that phonological knowledge is intrinsic to linguistic knowledge, there are at least 4 different ways in which the various issues pertaining to the nature of investigation of phonological knowledge are envisaged and elaborated. Now, they are isolative, functional, formal, and integrational or unified. So let's try to understand what we mean by isolative, functional, formal, integrational, or unified. Looking at the isolative view, now the isolative view was held by Brumberger and Hale in 1989 and 2000 and endorsed by Chomsky 1995. They consider phonology to be different from the rest of the language faculty in belonging to the periphery rather than the core. So this is the isolative view, where the phonology is considered different from the rest of the language faculty, especially when in terms of belonging to periphery rather than it belonging to the core. Now, coming to the functional view. Now, functional view is in contrast to isolative view and held by Burton Robert, also supported by Ohala, considers phonology to be grounded in the sensory motor apparatus. We can say it is in contrast to isolative view, which looks at it in terms of belonging to the periphery rather than the core. And here, this view, which is the functional view, considers it as something which is grounded in the sensory motor apparatus. The formal view of phonology, represented by Hale and Ries, considers phonology to be like the rest of the language faculty and to be grounded in the mind. So here you have seen phonology in the grounded in the mind, and functional, something grounded in the sensory motor. Then we have, although they express Hale and Race excludes phonetic substance entirely from phonology. So when they say that phonology is grounded in the mind, they basically exclude phonetic substance entirely from phonology. Other version of this approach debate concerning the inclusion of phonetic substance in phonology. Then finally you have the unified view. It is held by Perry Humbert, Beckman and Lett, which considers phonology to be laboratory science and argues for the adoption of scientific methodology to test this claim. So they take this approach as something to do with the laboratory science and something that can be tested. Argues that the scientific methodology should be adopted for that. Pandey, in his research of formal and functional aspect of phonological knowledge, continues and says that unified view of phonology seems to be the superior one, as this is the view which is in consonance with the growing trend of a unification of formal and functionalist concerns in the linguistics, as we can see. So, by formal aspect of phonological knowledge, we mean the innate, and the functional aspect of phonological knowledge, we mean the adaptive and emergent aspect of phonological knowledge. So Pandey proposes that in addition to isolative, functional and formal integration or unifying, further in terms of formal and functionalistic concerns, where formal and functional can be seen as the first one, concerning the innate, invariant computational disposition of human speech, and by functional aspect of phonological knowledge, that has to do with the adaptive and emergent aspect of phonological knowledge. To conclude, phonological knowledge is an important contribution to the most fundamental issues in phonology and the understanding of languages. It will definitely interest researchers and advanced scholars of phonology, linguistics, theory and philosophy of language to contribute in the further studies as well as in the empirical issues that concern this field.